Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Galactic Ambition, a Star Wars Unlimited podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Jason, and we're being consistent.
We are. Here it is.
We're-
And
we're-
you know what? This should be our third Star Wars video in a row as well.
In a row.
Big Star Wars week.
Big Star Wars week. I'm really excited for everyone to check out all the cool stuff we're putting out and talking about, and really want to see everyone's opinions on what we're talking about, so I could to just go back and forth with them and have fun in the comments of everything.
Yeah. We're already starting to see some on the tier list and everything, which is good. Very fun to do tier lists because, you never have all the answers, right? So there's a bunch of comments correcting us or letting us know that they like some of our hotter takes. I got a fellow Rose fan in the comments already, which I was pumped about. But yeah, it's a good time. So you'll have to let us know also in the comments of this video what you think about what we're talking about today, which, Jason, is
Legendary units from Jump to Lightspeed. Legendary cards.
Legendary cards.
Well, I guess, hold on, in the list, mostly legendary units.
Yeah.
And cards in the set. We're going to touch on some of the stuff we are excited for out of the legendary slot in the set, and some that we're kind of just like, all right, well, you tried kind of stuff.
I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate on a couple of those. So the big thing is we're not going to talk about every legendary because there's more legendaries now. There's 20 of them. And we just did a gigantic leader review. And frankly, we don't have.
We are tired. No, the bandwidth is stretched a little thin right now because we want to get all this awesome content out. Dan is working overtime on all this, so we're going to keep this one nice, short, sweet, concise, but really good content. It'll be a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah, and we're basically we wanted to make sure we talked about legendaries though.
Absolutely,
that's all. That's one of the big things that you look for in the set. I always every time we get the full spoiler, I'm like, okay, let me sit down, let me look at all the legendaries. What are the spicy cards I'm looking to pull, and in this set, allegedly they have tried to kind of tweak the legendary formula to fill it with some more kind of juicy, cool things, characters or vehicles in this case, in the case of this set that people really want to see. So we're talking more Darth Vader and less gore or
less
clone.
Gore. Yeah. or clone. Or God, clone. Clone.
I look at clone every couple of weeks. I look at it again. I'm like, and I read it. I'm like, I probably just haven't figured out the place. And then I read it again. And I go, no, I figured out the place. It's the bulk bin.
It's maybe in your binder because it's a legendary, but more often than not, it's bulk. Unfortunately. And then the art too is very uninspiring. I'm just like, really? Okay, well, you can't, it's a lesson to us all that try as we might, we can't win them all. There's futility in everything. Anyway, wow. But before we get into that and then to the content cut, we made our last video on bases. Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah.
And then the very next day, by the way, out of left field, we got another base.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that base real quick, Dan. It doesn't have an aspect.
Yeah, Lake Country.
Lake Country.
Lake Country on Naboo. Jason, I need you to hold me like you did back on Naboo.
Okay, for sure.
Back when we rolled around the fields with those big cow things that kind of looked like ticks, like engorged ticks.
Oh, that's really romantic.
It is romantic. It's classic George Lucas romance.
Oh, for sure.
Lake Country is from. And I think you're going to have a classic romance with this card. Because you're probably going to break up with it very quickly and never see it again.
Story of my life.
Okay. Now I think this. I'm sorry. Okay. This card. I think this card is really cool. I think it's a really fun idea. This is a 34 HP base with no aspect.
That's it.
You can toss it in your deck, and then you don't have access to two aspects, nor do you have access to the double aspect cards. Without paying the tax for anything, but you get 4 more health. In Premiere, it'll be once in a million that you'll see this come up. You'll have to basically have a list where you look at the list and you're like, you know what? All I'm really gaining from yellow in this is this one card, and is that really worth it? And then there'll be two lines of thought. Number one, no, it's not. I'll take it out and run Lake Country. Or why do I only have this one yellow card in here? I should probably put more in and make the deck better.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. First off, like I said, design space for this base is a set knocked it out of the park. This is so cool, and it's really exciting to talk about this. It's so cool. The fact that we have an aspect like base is really cool, and it's kind of creaking that door open to potentially those heroism and villainy bases that people rumble about, and they're like, they'll never do that. Well, now, I never thought they would do an aspectless base either, and here we are. But as far as applications, especially in Premier Play, I feel like I would just rather run the better cards I'm missing from another aspect, or run them without having to pay a penalty. Like, I don't know. I just don't see it. Again, it's really cool.
I will say that, like, in some of my Hera builds, I've gotten dangerously close to not needing this. Like, Hera double green is certainly something I've messed around with a lot, and sometimes I've been like, maybe I don't need these commands. They're a little clunky occasionally with what the build's trying to do. However, as the game goes on, they keep putting out more double green double aspect cards, where it, like, starts to then there's new stuff, new exciting. Like, I'm a fan of Masameta, actually, from set 3 in that deck. A nice 2-drop that lets you just kind of keep churning new units out. But yeah, I don't know. Now, the one thing, Jason, do you want to mention the one place where I think this actually will get some play?
What other formats do we have?
I thought you're the one who told me this. So maybe, sorry, someone else.
Did I tell you this?
Twin Suns. In Twin Suns, you already have access to 2 aspects.
Yeah, sure.
Or you can run double aspect decks. You can run 2 separate aspects. Now, Twin Suns lets you run 3 aspects if you're on a base, but when you get to start with a 34 health base, you have a higher chance of winning the game, or it requires your opponents to extend extra effort in able to knock you out of winning the game by having the most HP left on your base, right? Which is the win condition in Twin Suns. So it's an interesting card in the Twin Suns format, just because, well, it is a fairly self-policing format, and a lot of the time you can get away with running the lower health bases because everybody just kind of goes, well, you already have less health, so I'm not going to attack you. It does just, I don't know, it does give you a little bit of that extra health to work with, where especially if you're able to play a little defensively with the 2 aspects you do have access to, then maybe you'll end up being able to snag some more wins, specifically because of Lake Country. So that's where I do think is kind of interesting.
That's sweet. Awesome. Yeah, I kind of agree. The 3rd aspect is kind of nice, but I think 2 would be fine. And that extra hit point buffer is definitely relevant to Twin Suns. Watching the way those games, last Tuesday we had so many Twin Suns games going on instead of regular play. I definitely think that would have mattered in a couple of them, the way they were arguing.
All right. Well, so that's Lake Country. Interesting base. Will you play it? Probably not, but maybe.
So if you play Twin Suns, you might go to scenic Lake Country and roll around.
Yeah, with the big tick things.
Big tick things.
Or whatever they are. I don't know what those things are.
How romantic.
I normally know so many.
I was going to say, what the heck? Like, you're normally like the encyclopedia fandom here.
No idea what those things are. Jason, before we get to the legendaries, I just want to take a moment and we're going to mention how you guys can support us. If you guys do enjoy Galactic Ambition, a Star Wars Limited podcast, as well as any other podcasts in the Main Deck family of podcasts, you can support us in a number of ways. Number one, of course, you can always like the video, leave a comment down below. Let us know what your favorite legendary is from the set, what legendary you want to pull the most, or what you think is going to be the most valuable. That would also be kind of interesting to talk about here. Let us know your thoughts down below. Of course, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to catch more, or if you're listening on an audio platform. I know we have a number of listeners on Spotify, iTunes, etc. You guys can always hop over and leave a 5-star review on your platform of choice. Let us know what you think of us there and help other people find the podcast. That is super helpful. Thank you so much for all that. And then Of course, if you want to support us financially, we have a couple options. We have a Patreon you can join. We have some exclusive stuff on there and some cool deals that you can check out. We have the TCG player link. You can go to bit.ly/shop TCGs for our TCG player affiliate link when you're buying singles. If you want to pick up any of the cool legendaries, or maybe you want to buy out Lake Country because you know something
Yeah,
we don't.
you just need it.
You need it. Then you
You
can
need
go
it.
to use our affiliate link when you buy out the entire stock of Lake Country instead, and then we'll get a little cut of that purchase, which would be really cool. And if you need to pick up some Jump to Lightspeed or other Fantasy Flight, other Star Wars Limited, other Game Genic products, you can do that at JWW Sports Cards and Gaming, jwwcards.com. Use discount code Maindeck for 5% off of our already good prices. Link to that is down in the description of the YouTube video. All right. With that said, thank you guys so much for your support. Jason, let's talk legendaries.
Let's have a really legendary conversation.
Wow, right, that was so you sounded so excited.
I'm so excited. No, I really am. So let's talk to legendaries of this set. So, like you said, we got more than we thought that we typically would. We're not going to cover them all like we talked about. We're just going to talk about a few, mainly because there is so much to talk about. We'd rather leave a little bit to your imagination, you know. All right, so I'm going to start with the one of the legendaries that I'm really not so much excited about, but I love when legendaries are made based on a mechanic of the set, or that's very thematic to the set. So obviously indirect damage being a big thing and a big inclusion into the set. I really wanted to talk about Devastator. Devastator being an 8-drop aggression villainy ship with Imperial Vehicle Capital ship with the 9/6 stat line that says you assign all indirect damage you deal to opponents, and when played, deal 4 indirect damage to each opponent. My thought process behind this card is when I see flashing signs about a core mechanic of the set and finding a way to manipulate it further in your favor, I gravitate to that. And Devastator takes all those fun indirect damage triggers you're doing throughout the game, and just you get to choose where it goes. And if you've noticed with indirect damage, a lot of it is very front loaded because you don't have any control of where you put it. So the numbers are a bit higher. So Devastator gets to take those numbers that you may have already pushed out, and any further numbers you push out from these indirect damage cards, you get to control where it goes to maybe close out a game a lot quicker than you thought, or get rid of some pesky units. And the art on this card is super sweet. I really love this, just kind of the framing of this card. I bet the premium sideways version is going to be super dope sick when we get to see someone pull that. That won't be me out of a Carbonite booster.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Devastator won't be a sideways one. The two sideways ones.
There's only 2? Did I miss that?
It's only 2 of them. Yeah, the Super Star Destroyers, Executor, and Annihilator.
Man, they should change that. Okay, change that real quick. Either way, this is going to be really sweet, probably really sweet hyperspace to have in your collection. Hyperspace foil, especially with the lasers being shot. I bet that's going to be a really cool treatment.
Well, there is a prestige version. It's just not sideways.
See, they did too many of these.
No,
they confuse my brain, but no, there is a prestige version. I get it. That will look really cool too. Either way, the card is really sweet. I'm a big fan of it. I'm really excited to test it out with Boba Fett, actually. In the list I was building, I do have, I think I have it at 2 copies that we were working on at work today. So with one of our players. So Dan, what do you think of Devastator?
Devastator is, I think, a really frightening card. Now it's got this drawback of having the 6 HP, right? So this is like, it's the easiest to answer capital ship basically that we've had in the game. Well, like top end capital ship. There's some smaller ones, but whatever. So the easiest answer, like Star Destroyer in the game, but it does something really cool, which is with that, you get to assign the 4 damage it deals on the one play. So if you've gotten the opponent sufficiently down, they're still clinging on to like ECL or something. So they're at 25 health base, which the deeper we get into the game, the more scared I actually get of playing ECL.
Yeah.
And Tarkin Town and stuff. You've gotten them sufficiently low to the point where when you play Devastator, if they don't have anything crazy in space and you just go, okay, 4 indirect damage, I'll assign that all to your face. That might be the point where they have 2 options. Their next action has to either be answer Devastator or take initiative.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool position to be in, because when it swings for 9 next turn, if it just knocks him out, it's like a 13 damage it threatens basically when it comes down. even if you're like playing this kind of aggressive game where you're both pushing at each other, dropping Devastator can make them go, oh, well, I can't attack with anything this turn now. I literally,
Yeah,
because they can't afford to attack with anything. Um, or they might just like lose the game if it doesn't win them the game that turn, right?
sure.
So it's a I think it's a really cool, I think it's a really frightening card, and I do like how it pairs, like you said, with all of the indirect damage stuff in the set. Definitely one of the legendaries I think that sticks out the most to me as having some really, really cool potential impact on the game, from straight fireballing the opponent's face to its ability just to selectively kill one or multiple things when played as well, and then scaling that up to more indirect damage, let alone, this is probably not the only time we'll talk about it, but planetary bombardment, obviously, is the
Yeah.
other legendary that goes along with several of the ones we'll talk about here, where um, yeah, if you have Devastator out and resolve a planetary bombardment, you should not lose that game.
No, no. I mean, if you do this, well, I want to know how.
Oh, I should say, sorry, I should say for the audio listeners who aren't aware, planetary bombardment is the 6 cost aggression
Yeah.
tactic event card that has
Yeah.
deal 8 damage to a player if you control a capital ship. 8 indirect damage to a player. If you control a capital ship, deal 12 indirect damage instead. So with Devastator out, you choose where all 12 goes, because it's itself a capital ship, and then it lets you assign the indirect damage. So it's yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's very horrifying prospect to have to look down and think about. Enough about. I'm really devastated, but we're gonna move on from Devastator
Nice.
here. Nice, nice, nice. But we're gonna stay in aggression for the next choice because
Because
I think
Jason's here.
because I'm this is the aggression cast. No, I want to talk about Darth Vader because when this card was spoiled, there was a varying set of opinions, and then we saw a card a couple days later that got, or maybe even a day or two later, got me really excited. So, a Darth Vader legendary unit is a 6-drop aggression villainy unit, 7/7 Force Imperial Sith pilot with piloting cost 3 if you are in aggression and villainy, which states attached unit gains on attack. You may do 1 damage to a unit if the unit is defeated. This way, you may do 1 damage to a unit or base, and this is a 3/3 stat line. It grants as a pilot. Or you could just get a 6-drop 7/7. Now, a 6-drop 7/7 legendary does not inspire too much. It feels like cool, great card. The piling ability for 3 is actually really awesome, really useful. You're going to be able to plink things down, and you get a nice, solid, meaty 3/3. That 1 damage will most certainly, when sequenced the right way, kill a unit or at least soften something up to lose. And then if you're doing the soften up, well, at least you'll be able to get it off the table. But if you get the defeat, you're going to deal another point of damage wherever you want. But they spoiled a card I think it might have been the next day or a day or two later when they spoiled Eject. That got me really excited about this card.
Yes.
And without having Eject in front of me, because I don't want to clack on my keyboard. Actually,
it's a
hold on.
cost. It's a
2 cost, right?
Yep,
I just was missing the cost.
Event.
Yeah.
That will let you move a pilot from a vehicle into the ground arena, exhaust it, and then draw a card.
So that makes a 6-drop 7/7 a lot sweeter when I can deploy it for 3 on a ship and then pop it off that ship and start hitting my opponent the next turn.
Yeah.
That excites me a lot more. And I can trip the card back. That excites me a lot more. This really turned into a conversation about Eject. But when I saw Vader, I was like, all right, whatever. And then I saw Eject. I'm like, I want to do that very badly.
Yeah, Eject is really, really fascinating. Eject is a card that I think we're going to see a lot of people brewing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get back to Darth Vader in just a second, but just the fact that it also allows you to take some leaders, and then if they were like a pilot leader on a ship, put them back onto the ground arena, or not back onto, but put them onto the ground arena so that you can have them in either one if the opponent starts to try to answer you in space. You can just go, okay, fine. Now my leader's going to be on ground instead. But with Poe Dameron as well, it's a really fascinating card where Poe doesn't have to use his epic action to pilot something. So you can have him pilot something, eject him onto the ground. He can die, and then you can still like use his epic action to put him back on the ground if you want to for some
Yeah.
reason, or just start piloting with him again. It's really cool, the different applications it has with the leaders and with these pretty crazy powerful like legendary pilots like Darth Vader. Now, I want to mention, I'm just sort of like, I want to throw a bone to Mr. Skywalker here, Mr. Vader, that as a 6-drop 7/7, in if we're already looking at playing him in command because we like eject and stuff,
Yeah.
he is still fitting greatly into that ECL stat line
Oh,
where
sure.
you can still hold him back on your opponents, like if they're playing a 6 deploy leader and it's not one of the like 2 that has 8 health.
Yeah.
You can he's one of the cards you can keep in your hand, and this is the benefit of piloting, is this like dual purpose nature where you just hold them back, and if they ever do go for the leader deploy, you can ECL Vader, knock it out with that 7 attack to deal with most leaders in the game. Um, Even if he's just going to be blank on the ground there, usually, I mean, actually be interested to see the statistic on this, but what percent of games are won when your opponent's leader is knocked out, the action after it flips by the player
Sure.
who knocked it out? I think it's a high, like a
I would
pretty
imagine
high
it's got to be
percentage.
pretty high. Yeah.
It feels usually like when I lose games to that, or when that happens to me, and then I lose the game a few turns later, I see my light, I see it all flashing in front of me. As soon as that happens, I lose my leader, and then like that, like literally just lost the game because that happened. Um, so yeah, I think that's really cool. I think it's really nice that Vader can do that, but then having the eject shenanigans as well as just honestly being for 3 cost a very reasonable pilot that has a lot of
Hmm.
value attached to him. Great legendary. I
Yeah.
think this is probably not going to quite contend with set 1 Vader as far as ubiquity, but this Vader's going to have a niche in his decks, and he's going to be really good in those
Yeah.
decks.
And bonus points for using the word ubiquity.
Oh
Good
yeah,
job. Good
I
job.
learned
Thank you.
a lot of words from card games specifically.
Nice, nice. Look that one up if you're not too sure, like me. All right, so I'm going to talk to the last legendary I've got on my little list. It's not in aggression this time,
It
mainly
might as well be
because it
though.
might as well be. It's a
Honestly,
it is kind of a sweet card, right? There's a little bit of a theme. I'm going to talk about Radiant 7. Radiant 7 is a 7-drop cunning ship, a Republic vehicle capital ship with a 5-stick stat line that says each enemy non-leader unit gets -1, -0 for each damage on it. And then when played, you deal 5 indirect damage to a player. What a cool card. Like, just in general, like, right? Like, just the static effect of the -1, -0 for each damage on it can take, even if you don't have this synergistic build around spreading maybe some damage around, or you just have units that were left up that ran into something or are not quite defeated, and you drop this thing, and all of a sudden they are, at this point in the game, they could be either ineffective or barely scratching at things, which is just starts making, again, punching up is a big thing in the main deck Galactic Ambition podcast kind of discussions. This is the opposite. This is taking the gloves off of your opponent.
yeah, which is just as good in a lot of scenarios.
Exactly, right. Because then it allows you to run into things that you may not favorably trade with before, and walk away with either taking them down or just making them ineffective. And then you have the 5 indirect damage to a player. So now you play this card, and now they have the choice. Do I want to weaken the units that I have in play, or do I want to, say, oh, well, I guess I'm fireballing myself, for 5 damage, or spreading the damage strategically enough where the -1, -0 may not matter if they don't have an answer for this card. Dan, how do you feel about Radiant 7?
I feel like this is one of these legendaries where and this might be like my Django Fett comments before set 3, something I regret saying later. But that's fine. That's the life of a content creator. I feel like this is one of these legendaries where we have not scratched the surface yet
Oh, for
of
sure.
this thing's competitive viability. The more I think about this card, and I think about this card actually a lot, it has made it into several of my early lists because it always feels like a generically useful card just to get that indirect damage coming down on certain board states. And how many times have you, well, maybe, I don't know if you've played this too much, Jason, but have you resolved a Supreme Leader Snoke and your opponent just realized, even if their stuff doesn't die, everything bigger that becomes -2 is like, well, I can't, nothing is good anymore. Like literally not like every
Yeah.
time my opponents are like, well, I don't have any good actions anymore, even when they have stuff on board.
Right. Yeah.
And this does sort of an unbridled damage or attack reduction on the opponent
Yeah.
as long as you're able to either just put it into the right board state or play a deck that actually plays to the, having some value out of this. So this not being heroism or villainy, I think is crazy. I think it's
Another wrinkle to it, right? Like I was going to mention that. It's a really sweet wrinkle to this card.
Yeah, this can go into so many decks. Like you can do things like overwhelming barrage on Radiant 7, even if it's not gonna, even if it wouldn't like kill everything. Instead, you can just go, well, fine, I'm just gonna make everything very, very small now. um, and that is like not unreasonable. This can go into Django. This can go right in the Django Fett deck because this indirect damage, if they choose to deal it to their units, it still is coming from Radiant 7. So it still will allow you to even exhaust things that that then also have lower attack. I think people are going to play this once or twice, probably once, and then they'll realize, wow, things can't hurt me. I can attack into things pretty freely and not take as much damage. And using effects like shoot first will cause things, even if it doesn't die now, it's just going to completely neuter them.
Yeah.
I think there's like tons of applications, and at the worst, this thing usually just drops and is just going to like do a chunk of damage to them and then be a 5-6 in space, which is not unreasonable still.
Like I mentioned in the tier list podcast, Star Wars Unlimited is one of those games more so than others where asking the question is very important. And this is one of the biggest questions you can drop on the table, I think. Do I want to spread this damage across my units and smurf them down? Do I want to take this damage to my face? Do I want to deal with this card and let it stay on the table with this kind of innocuous stat line? And deal with my units being smaller. Like you said, you really kind of nailed it with the Snoke comment, because every time I sneak it, like the shoulders droop and they get kind of like, like, oh man, what am I supposed to do about this? This is definitely one of those cards where what am I supposed to do about it? And the Django thing is just, that's really nasty. That's really exciting. I think this is one of those cards, like you said, you're going to play against it for the first time and it's going to do things. You're just like, huh, well, that's not great. I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah. We have like Vader, Luke, Boba Fett, Cad Bane. There's a pile of leaders that are just going to like chunk random damage out on stuff. Palpatine. That's another one.
Yeah.
You could just put this random damage out on things. And when you drop Radiant 7, then it's just, yeah. I mean, your game is going to become a lot easier feeling. Also decks that are creating tokens can just ram tokens into things to reduce their stats as well, which is kind of interesting too. I really love this card.
Sweet card.
I wish the art were like a little.
I was
more
literally about to say
exciting.
It's just kind of I think that's part of the why people may not be like looking at this legendary, be like, huh? It's a Star Wars Unlimited art card of all time. That is for sure. But sweet card. Parting is such sweet sorrow. We're gonna sneak one more card we're excited about, because Dan said if I didn't talk about this card, I wouldn't want to know what happens. But we're gonna go ahead.
I actually I had like 4 cards I wanted to talk about, but I'm just gonna. But I narrowed it down to just.
Okay.
This one,
because I feel greedy.
No. I had a pile of them, but I'm like,
sweet.
I said, we're not going to talk about the Superstar Destroyers. I said, we're not going to talk about Home One. These are all like good cards.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the Starhawk.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this has one of the wildest effects we've seen in the game yet, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to talk about this thing. I don't know if this is playable. Okay. Frankly, I'm not sure. But there are a lot of ways that we have in the game right now to get ramp or to cheat things out for cheaper. And this is the kind of card where if you can start your turn with the Starhawk in play,
oh boy,
you can do some dumb stuff. Starhawk is a 9-cost command heroism New Republic vehicle capital ship. It is a 6/9 stat line, and thank goodness for that 9
Yeah,
because it
it's
needs
really
it to live.
nice. Yeah.
At 9, 9 is so high, but it does have ambush, so it gets to immediately deal with something that might otherwise try to like ram into it and cause it a problem. And then it has this line of text. While paying costs, you pay half as many resources, round it up.
Round it up.
So if something would cost you 6, it now costs you 3. If something would cost you 9, it now costs you 5. If something would cost you 14, it only costs you 7 now. So Jason, do you remember that? Do you remember that bulk rare?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, it was it's called Endless Legions.
Yeah, it definitely is. You're gonna might have to dig that one up out of the bulk bin.
It's from Twilight.
Yeah.
So of course it's not a great legendary, but it says reveal any number of resources you control. Play each unit revealed this way for free, one at a time. If you know your opponent has no true board wipes in their deck, they're not running Super Laser Blast, they're not running the new Nebula Ignition or something. If you could go Starhawk and there's gonna be Timmy players out there who are just gonna get jacked about this. You go Starhawk into Endless Legions. You can even Jason, you can even do this in a not double green deck.
Yeah.
Endless Legions goes to 16, but Starhawk makes it only 8.
Yeah.
And if you could play Starhawk, you can pay 8.
Yeah.
And then you can Endless Legions, and then you can put out like 6 or 7 or 8. You just resource
everything. Yeah, exactly.
Everything out there.
Yeah.
And then you should just win the game at that point.
And I really want to see that happen.
Now I think that's the goofy. That's not going to be our PQ winning line or whatever. But if this gets played at all, I'm going to go back to Planetary Bombardment and just talk about the fact that you now have a capital ship in play and you have a 3 cost 12 indirect damage event in your hand. If you had like 2 bombardments in your hand and you resolve this thing, just again, like game's just over, except in this case, those were all cards that might actually be reasonable to play.
Right.
So yeah, fun stuff. I think it's crazy. I think what this is saying is like, it's not just like ramp 5 or whatever. It's ramp X, where X is half of the cost of everything you play that turn. It could be like, it's a crazy amount of potential ramp. So I like it. It's fun.
I like it too. I think this is definitely one of those cards where you want to talk about magical Christmas land cards. This is 100% one of the like magical Christmas card lands or cards of all time. However, I do think there's actual real applications and feasibilities of this card getting deployed fairly early and kind of turning the game on its head if left unchecked.
It's a must. I mean, you got to answer it. You literally can't let your opponent take the initiative with this in play. It's not going to go well for you.
Yeah, it's just going to not go well. And it's so, what a wild design. What a crazy card. And it's just got to really, again, the 9 toughness really kind of seals the deal. Like, this card is going to be sticky to deal with without hard removal. And I'm really kind of just excited to see what the real brewers out there show me some really what's up with this card, because I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely.
All right. We talked about the good, and now we're going to talk about the cards that are cards in the set, right? They're just here.
Not every legendary.
Not every legendary is going to be gangbusters, and this is also two opinions of people on the internet. You might think these cards we're about to talk about are insane, are really good. You're excited to play them. That's not to say we're not excited for these cards. They're just, if I'm looking at the other side of the scale, these are on the other end. And I'm going to start with Hondo Ohnaka. 4-drop, double vigilance, 3/5 underworld unit, shielded, that says on attack, you may take control of a non-pilot upgrade on a unit and attach it to a different eligible unit. I always struggle with double aspect cards in general. I want them to feel like they're going to be really knock my socks off. Now, a 3/5 shielded unit is fine. Like, I have no issues with the stat line. I think it's a decent unit. I just don't know about this on attack trigger being like something like, oh man, I can't wait to move around these upgrades and attach to a different eligible unit. Now, you could build a thematic deck to it. And is this worth running as a double? Like maybe there's a double vigilance deck that you want to play where you're going to like have all these awesome upgrades, move around to add increment. Like I'm going to put this plus, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but it gives my guy +2/+0. I'm going to move it to this one. And now I'm spreading more damage around as I attack. And that's cool, right? But it's dependent on keeping other units in play and having an upgrade to keep in play in a meta game where pilots are coming, where people are going to be cute and run cards like Confiscate to get rid of these upgrades. I just don't know about its viability. And this card for 6, if we're paying an aspect tax on it, really does not inspire any good faith. That's my biggest issue with this card. If this card was for Vigilance, I think I wouldn't be talking about this card, and I actually think it'd be really sweet. But instead, this is for double Vigilance. It's like, for 6, I don't really want to play this card. How do you feeling about it?
Okay, so I'm gonna push back on this one for sure.
Sweet.
Now I want to preface this with this also doesn't absolutely knock my socks off, right?
Sure.
But there are a few situations that I'm already thinking of where Hondo is a card that I do want to play, and it makes me think about going double Vigilance.
All right.
To play it a little bit. Okay, so one of those is I definitely played a good amount of Gar Saxon.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
Especially in the set 2, set 2 to set 3 meta. It was mostly set 2. I think I was playing a lot of Gar Saxon.
Same. Yeah.
Yep. Gar Saxon making Hondo a 4/5 with the shielded is always really, really pretty sweet. It's unfortunate though that his on attack and Gar Saxon's deployed side to return any upgrades attached to him to their owner's hand when he's defeated. Those don't really like work together super well. Like if you steal your opponent's sweet upgrade or whatever and put it on Gar Saxon, you don't want to do that because then they get it back when he dies.
Right.
But it's still, I always look at these shielded units and think, okay, yeah, that's really cool in Gar. That works really well. Now, here's an interaction also from Shadows that I want to mention, though. When we're talking about Vigilance decks, we're talking about decks that are going to look at running Lom Pike.
Yeah.
And Lom Pike, very cool unit, super underrated right away. Ended up getting a lot of play, especially in Command Kira decks, because it's a pretty effective card to play on ECLs. Now it'd be in double Vigilance here, but I still think it'll be effective because now what you can do with Lom Pike is when he attacks, you give a shield token to an opponent's thing and then a shield token to your thing.
Then you just
Lom. Is it just to Lom or is it to your thing?
It might be to Lom, but
I have to pull him up here because it's no, to a friendly unit. I thought
I thought it was. Yeah, I was about to pull it on my phone, but yeah.
So Hondo protects himself already. He's hard to take off because of the shielded. Lom can actually put another shield onto your Hondo if they got rid of the first one. Put a shield on their thing. And then you can attack with your Hondo and take the shield off of their thing and put it on Lom or put it on Hondo or whatever. That's a combo where when that gets going, if that sits on board, the opponent's not going to have a good time.
No. And it's also really sweet, right? Like that's just so cool.
Yeah. And Hondo dealing with Lom, like thematically is also very fun too. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that we have had a couple of situations in the game where there have been a few upgrades that have really taken over games. It's like Dark Saber and
Saber,
is definitely like worth mentioning here. We've had a few decks that are that run, a few like lightsabers and stuff like that. Fallen lightsabers have shown up. Hondo's kind of always there to go, you know what? Let me just snatch that from you then if you try to play it.
Quick. Yeah.
If you're playing double Vigilance and they are playing Sabine and you drop a Hondo, they really can't afford to put Darksaber on Sabine anymore unless they can guarantee that Hondo dies because the shielded he's not going to. Very easily at least. So I think he puts a damper on things in a pretty interesting way. At the very least, if you have a double Vigilance deck, I think you can sideboard Hondo, right?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
You can throw him in there, and if the opponent is playing things like Darksaber or come up with some other weird nonsense with whatever else we have, maybe they're playing a Mandalorian deck. And you want to
maybe.
Fett's Armor. That's actually another one.
Oh yeah, I want to steal Ag.
Yep, if they're playing Hero Fett or Django and they put Fett's Armor onto not Django. I'm thinking Fire Spray. But if they put Fett's Armor on Hero Fett or the new Fett for some reason, you can snatch that away as just a way of getting rid of it. And then of course we have Experience and shields, which there are plenty of decks that have plenty of. So like, I think Hondo's not gonna, he's never gonna not have a target, but he might be relegated to sideboards in double vigilance decks. But even then, that's at least a use for him, right? I don't think he's bad.
No, and that was not the intention. I don't think he's bad, but I definitely, for me, it's when I look at a legendary spot and I see him, I'm like, you know what, I could have had this or these.
Yeah, sure.
There, there's not as much sizzle to the steak, and that's why I wanted to touch on it. It is a really cool card. I'm excited to see what people can do with it. It will not be in any of my list because I am a filthy hater, and that's the way it is. That's we already know that. No, it's just, I don't know. Again, double vigilance, not really my play style either way, but you made a really good point about Gar Saxon. I do think there's some room to explore there, so that's really cool. All right. Moving on.
What's next for me to fight?
What's next for you to fight? Yeah, this is the portion of the podcast where I'm just like, I don't really care for this card. And Dan's like, well, Jason,
you're dumb.
And the internet at large, anyway. First off, all the spoiler stuff for Death Star plans was super sweet. I really that skit, everything was awesome.
Yes.
However, let's talk about the Death Star plans real quick. The Death Star plans is a 2-drop upgrade with no aspect that says when attached unit is attacked, the attacking player takes control of this upgrade and attaches to a unit they control. Attached unit gains the first unit you play. Each round costs 2 less. Now, I'm not talking about this card because it's bad. I'm talking about this card because if you are committing to play this card, you have set up this really sweet mini game inside your game that I don't know if there is a competitive viability to, which is why I'm bringing it up. You are now putting this big old sign on your guy that says, well, if you don't deal with this card, I'm going to discount my things. Or you're putting a big flashing sign on my guy that says, well, I really don't want this on the table anymore. You're going to take care of it. I don't have the stomach to play a card like the Death Star plans. Dan, what do you think about it?
This is no clone. Okay. It
is not clone. No, absolutely not.
This card is
first off, the art is way better than clone.
Okay, that's very true.
Very first out of the gate.
Like, frankly, the hyperfoil of this card is going to look really sweet.
It's going to look awesome. Yeah, actually. Like, again, this is not because this card is bad. I just feel like it's polarizing enough to talk about.
I think. Okay, I cannot overtly say this card is a top tier competitive card. I have no clue if it could reach that.
Mm-hmm.
I would immediately say no, just because it's not just like a straight value for you kind of. This is not Darth Vader. This is not even, we're not going to talk about Legendary Han Solo just because we did the spoiler.
We already did.
But he's also a very, very good Legendary. But Death Star plans is a wild card that has some very, I think, nuanced value and also some very Timmy power to it when you can actually just like not lose it. For one turn. So I'll talk about the Timmy part first, but Jason, do you know how early you can play a Starhawk?
How early can you play a Starhawk?
So you could get Starhawk down on turn 4. Which if you do that, you probably win the game. Now you could do that with multiple Death Star plans. That's never going to happen. Death Star plans is not unique.
Not unique. No, it's just an item.
But Death Star plans, and then I hate that ship. Or sorry, they hate that ship. They hate that ship, and Death Star plans gives you a total reduction of 4 after calculating the 1 in there. So you need 5 resources to do that. And then it just gives them 2 TIE fighters, and then your Starhawk ambushes one of them, which is cool and fun. All you have to do is hold a Death Star plans onto something, maybe an arena where the opponent hasn't committed much yet, and then take initiative and play They Hate That Ship. And then you get a Starhawk down. And now, again, if they don't have the Vanquish ready to go, they have to have Vanquish that turn.
Right. They have to
Vanquish it. If they don't Vanquish it, you next turn have not even like potentially more than an effective 12 resources to work with. Depending on if you have Death Star plans still, right? yeah, it's basically like doubling your resources though for the next turn. You can play anything pretty much. Um, that is pretty crazy and pretty fun, and I think something that again these like Timmy players will really gravitate towards. And this is the nice thing about Star Wars Limited is this is a game where decks like that can exist and win games at your
Yeah.
locals and be really fun. Um, so I think it's going to make a lot of people excited. Now, you did mention the nuance thing I want to mention is you said if I put this on this thing, it's going to just like mark the thing to die.
Which is,
That's called giving something Sentinel,
yeah, for
and
sure.
is kind of cool actually that you
Yeah.
can just go, okay, now it's not going to stop you from dying when you're at low health and they just go, oh well, I'll just kill you instead.
Yeah.
But early in the game, if you don't want that aggro deck to kill you, like on turn 3 or 4, just put a Death Star plans on something, and then they'll go, "Oh no, I actually have to kill that thing because otherwise they're gonna Vader and then whatever, and then I it's gonna get out of control." And that is a valuable thing in some
Sure.
cases too. So this is I don't know. This is a cool card. Now you have to take it back from the opponent. It sets up that weird game like you were talking about,
Yeah,
where like they
exactly.
attack your thing, and then you go, okay, I'll attack your thing then with my other thing, and you start trading.
Yeah,
it back
I
and
hope
forth.
you had a plan for that
You need to have a plan for the
because
Death
you
Star
no
plan.
longer have the Death Star plans in that situation.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? As we're talking, what I just thought about would be really sweet with this card if we paired it with the yellow base, the new yellow base, which the name I forget. So we just try to aggressively craft this really awesome opening hand where I get to resolve this and just start to go off with like whatever dumb degenerate thing I want to deploy as quickly as possible. You know, it's definitely one of those fun cards that are a lot of fun to think about and theory craft with. I do not have the spine to play this card because I will most certainly screw this up. My opponent is going to have this, and then I'm just going to get blown out.
Yeah.
So I will see you guys at the bottom tables. All right, that was the Death Star plans. One more card on my list for Dan to tell me I'm wrong about. Which a card I actually don't even think is that bad, is Unity of Purpose, but I do think it's a card worth talking about. Unity of Purpose is a 6-cost double command event. It's a plan that says for each friendly unit with a different name, give each unit you control +1/+1 for its phase. So, in a set and in a game that supports tribal thematics and really wants you to play these tribal decks and going wide, or even just going wide in general, a Unity of Purpose seems like a really cool card. I think the one thing there's two things that really kind of hold this off for me is the double command cost, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and each friendly unit with a different name. And I get why it's each friendly unit with a different name because, it's a unity. We're all uniting for a common goal of, whooping someone's butt. And that's what this card is doing, trying to get your guys really big. It's a really huge anthem effect for that turn that likely resolved on the right board will either clear up a lot of your opponent's board or really dish out a ton of damage. But I don't care for cards too much that want you to go as wide as possible for a payoff. Even 3 different units with a different name is 6 resources in a double command +3/+3 to all my stuff worth it. I'm not too sure I feel that great about it. However, Dan, what is your Unity of Purpose?
First of all, this is I believe this is depicting the scene from Rise of Skywalker, which is like one of the really good scenes in that movie. So I really do I opened this and I hadn't seen it spoiled in my content creator kit.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that was really exciting to see. Just because again, that's the purpose of having legendaries, right? It's having iconic moments and characters.
Okay.
Like Clone and
like
Gore.
Clone, just like Clone and the Battle of Chrysanthemum.
Okay, the Battle of Christophsis.
I had to bring the name of that card into this for some reason, like I do every time. But no,
that was a decent legendary choice, other than the card sucked. But
we're wrong about that one.
Unity of Purpose is a card that is again another like mega Timmy. Like by the way, for people who don't know what I'm talking about, I guess I just realized.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about that.
Speak. Timmy is a psychographic profile that is used to refer to players who like things to be really, really big, really bombastic, really exciting. They want to play the 15-15 thing. They want to fill the board with a million guys in attack. Yeah, they want cards like Unity of Purpose. They want cards like Starhawk that let them go super, super, super big. Um, that's it's some people have used it in a derogatory way recently, which is
I hate. Oh man, I could have a whole conversation about how they referenced Timmy as a like. You know what? Those
yeah,
people don't
no, no,
like
no.
fun.
It's not meant
Yeah,
that way.
not at all.
It's intended to reference just something that people enjoy about card
Yeah,
games, a way they can express themselves. So there's nothing bad about it. And in fact, I have a lot of Timmy like tendencies a lot of the time. Hence me choosing Starhawk to talk about.
yeah, sure.
But Unity of Purpose is super exciting for the people who want to make those gigantic boards and pump them like crazy. And honestly, like I was building a Darth Vader list earlier and I thought about it for a second and I was like, the new Vader, where you're putting a bunch of ties on board and all you have
Yeah.
to do is have a couple other things and suddenly you +3/+3 the board. And that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But what I think from a competitive standpoint, you're going to see is that outside of maybe the most niche use of this, a lot of the time attack pattern delta from set 1 is going to
Yeah.
either do the same thing because keeping more than 3 things out on the board is kind of hard a lot of the time. And so in that case, if you have 3 different things and you play Unity of Purpose, they each get +2/+2. If you have attack pattern delta, they get +3/+3
Plus three,
+2/+2
plus three.
+1/+1, which is the same total stat gain for 1 cost less. Except that if you only have 1 unit, attack pattern delta still gives it +3/+3. And if you only have 1 unit of Unity of Purpose, it only gives it +1/+1, which is not something you're going to do. So outside of going really, really crazy, super wide, where Unity of Purpose might have a niche use, if you're going to put something like this in, just look at attack pattern delta and think, well, this is probably more useful if my opponent's actually playing the game of Star Wars Unlimited and not just letting me like roll over.
Just letting you hang out. A little social hour.
That said, there's another legendary this set called Scramble Fighters.
Yeah.
And I thought about this pretty hard because it costs 7. It's a command villainy legendary event that says create 8 TIE fighter tokens and ready them. They can't attack bases for this phase. So I know there's a way to go super, super wide and then like next turn Unity and like even if you only have no other things, it +8s the board. If you have still all 8 ties out, if you have anything else in like the ground arena, you're suddenly going to make all those ties like 3/3s and like what's the opponent going to do then realistically? But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there's niche uses, but very, very niche, right?
Yeah.
Is ultimately where I'm at with this card.
Yeah. And I think even though we didn't really touch on it, a lot of the stuff we tried to look at it from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah.
If this was not about like again, I am weirdly enough to go back on it. I am not a Timmy gamer in Star Wars, but in another game like Magic, oh my gosh, I'm big Timmy gaming in a game like that. But in Star Wars, I'm more of I want to do that aggressive style. But this card calls to me because if it was in another game, I'm going to find a way to cast this card. But you made a really good point. It's very hard to spin the plate of a lot of different units. You're spinning a lot of plates if you have 3 or 4 units out. And honestly, too, in those kind of games where you have 3 or 4 units out, you are either in a position where you're winning the game already, or you are in a position where your opponent doesn't care about those units and has found a way to go over that or through it to win the game themselves. It's a cool card. The idea of this card, the flavor of this card is really awesome. Unfortunately, I'm not sleeving it up anytime soon, but I hope you guys do. I think that's it for my list. I think we're good. Do you want to slap one more on there? Or?
No, I'm not going to slap one more on. I mean, I already mentioned there's a bunch of other. There's not going to slap one more on, except you, Jason.
Oh, dang. Wow.
No, I'm sorry. That just occurred to me. But I mentioned there's a bunch of other legendaries I do really like. The Superstar Destroyers are insane. The Ghost is super cool. Nebula Ignition is a new board wipe that might be very playable. Home One, Han Solo, whatever. There's a ton of good stuff. But I have to go back and just say one more thing about Hondo Ohnaka.
Okay.
Okay. Because I was continuing to crank on him a little bit as you were talking about, I don't know, Death Star plans or something. I wasn't
paying attention to me. Yeah, fair.
I was just thinking about Hondo Ohnaka more.
Yeah.
So I realized something about Hondo Ohnaka, and this might, as soon as I thought about this, I thought this actually might even have been like the purpose of designing this card. So are you ready for enlightenment, Jason?
Take me there.
While you have Hondo Ohnaka, in play, you can freely delete one shield per turn at 0 cost. You never take damage from it.
Sure. Yeah, because you just
and not just delete the shield, you deal damage without taking anything back and remove the shield. He's a constant. Actually, we have a new card in the set that's like it's an aggression card that's like destroy or defeat a shield on something and then deal 3 damage to it.
That's Hondo.
That is actually what Hondo gives you every single turn because the on attack trigger happens before the damage.
Yeah.
So you attack something with a shield, steal the shield from it, then he deals 3 damage to it, and then the shield you just stole gets popped. So that is pretty cool. If there's like
pretty cool.
If there's like heavy shield stuff that you're worried about, Hondo, he's here for you. Just like always, good old Hondo has your back.
All right. Well, I hope you've reached Nirvana and enlightenment just like I have with that little extra tidbit about Hondo. Maybe that will change your opinion about the card and any of the other legendaries we talked about today. This is a little fun conversation we have. We're less than a week away from opening your very own Hondo at your pre-releases. I know I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to just get my hands on these cards. And with my flourishing new player base opening all these new cards together, I'm really excited for their first pre-release event. So I'm just pumped.
Oh yeah. That'll be a ton of fun. And Jason, if you open Hondo and you're otherwise interested in playing blue, do you off aspect him in pre-release, in limited?
I think in limited, yeah. I think this card's pretty sweet.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. I was pretty much on that page, but like,
yeah, this card's really sweet and limited. Like, has a really decent stat line, and if you have something like annoying that they're dealing with, and people are more likely to play. Actually, I guess I need to look at the set list of random upgrades in the set.
There's a bunch on like ships and
yeah.
stuff.
So like if I mean, yeah, Hondo immediately shoots up in value again. Like we were talking about, I think we like to talk about things in a scope of constructed viability, but limited. I think this card is actually really sweet. I would most certainly sleeve it up.
Pretty much any legendary we talked about, including Death Star plans, I think I'm sleeving up.
Oh, for sure.
In limited.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope everyone really enjoyed today's podcast topic on legendaries. Thank you for watching Galactic Ambition, part of the Main Deck podcast family. I look forward to hearing what you guys think about the legendaries in the set or anything we talked about in the comments below. Thank you for checking us out on your favorite podcast medium. I'm really excited for Jump to Lightspeed in a week. Let me know what you guys open up. We're going to see you guys in 2 weeks to talk more Star Wars Unlimited. So for Dan, I'm Jason. You guys have a great night. Take care. See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Good night. Bang.